Hello again. So apparently I've got to captivate you within these first few seconds of this video. So without waffling on, we're going to take this and turn it into this. So please stay and watch how we do it. Cheers. I've got to compete with the wildlife. And he shut up. Right, so this is the flange bit that I've got to remake. And this is the cardboard or brown paper template of flange. So it's got, what, 1, 2, 3 bends in it. But it's also got form. So there's another 1, 2 bends in there. I think the thing that's set in stone or metal is that it's got these 2 bends. These are clear. These 2 bends. And the other thing is the width is set in stone. So we cut out a strip of metal that wide, put bend 1, bend 2 in, then I try and put these 2 bends in and deal with the shrinking of these as I go. And then when it's all done, fold that edge up. So I've just, with the shears, done a rough cut out of the sheet of stock mild steel, and now I'm just trimming this to size. Template and original piece and the new piece. So I've just done my not idiot proof, probably idiot proof but not me proof marking, so that line I bend down and this line I bend up to give me that kick. Backing up in the middle there, but I'll put a dolly on it and see if that keeps it down. Dolly. So as it's so narrow, it's difficult to hold. That should be okay. Now that needs to kick up. Just flatten that out a bit better. It's only a reinforcer, but obviously we want to do the best we can. Now I've got to kick that up. So to kick that up is effectively kicking that down. Yeah. Actually that's just about the right size. I'll give that a go. When I grow up, I'm going to buy myself a press brake. I used to sell tools and one of my customers bought one. And I thought, yeah, I could do one maybe. I wasn't very pleased with the quality of the one he got. Do stuff like this okay. could have got it at like half price, but I got lots of other stuff instead, so toolboxes and power tools, socket sets, spanners, screwdrivers, torches, loads of stuff. Got a bit of a curve in it, but as I say, we're going to change the shape of this anyway. That now is to match up with that there. So anything's better than what we got. So now I need to sort this bend out. Now I looked at the other side on the van, and they haven't shrunk the material in here to put this curve in. They've actually got a notch. You can't tell it from here. Well, I guess you can tell it from here. There's a gap in material here. So there's a plonking great big notch or gap. So I can measure down to here, take the chunk out and bend it. So, as I say, that's tearing down there a little bit. Try to planish on there to stretch it. If it tears, it tears. I can weld it up or I can leave it, doesn't really matter. But what I'm going to do now is cut this piece to that length so that it'll fit inside, and I can tune this angle, get this angle following the main piece. So I sort of got there in the end, and then decided that I could probably do better, and that it wasn't a perfect match with the next panel along. And it's sort of all clipped in there nicely. There's got a bit of a gap there. Those two flanges are supposed to be on the same level, and there's, I don't know, about 4 or 5 mil between them, and that's really because this step here is a little bit too high. I already adjusted that once, and to adjust it again I'll have to flatten this out and then bend it again. So I'm not going to do it. I use this as a training piece. Learn a lot about the order of which to do these things in, and what I did first was to put these bends in and then try and bend it, and that made it difficult to stretch it here. Yeah, it was difficult all round. So it occurred to me that the best way to do a piece like this would be to put these bends in first. Once those bends are in and it perfectly matches the profile of the piece that it's working with, then I can make the turn the edges up and make the various steps and bits and pieces. So, like I say, I'm going to remake this piece with what I've learnt, changing the order and hopefully getting it right quicker, if not first time. This now is the second piece, and what I did was took the flat blank, put this crease in, that crease in or bend, and it was obviously flat, and then with it flat, bent these sides up. I thought it was going to be a tall order without any stretching equipment to stretch this part, put a notch in it, and then tried to stretch this part out, but eventually it split. This was just done with no folding equipment, just tipped with a hammer and a dolly on the sandbag. I just hammered it flat, hammered it over, hammered it flat, hammered it over. So it hasn't come out too bad. And now what I need to do, it's a nicer piece. It fits. Sorry about the camera work. It fits nicer. fits that profile marker. This is all a little bit sort of close but no cigar. So that's cleared on there now, and we're looking at a much nicer fit. What I need to do now is just mark that line there, tip that up, and that'll give me the return I need, the fixing to the body. And then I can mark this edge and tip that up. Obviously got to do some stretching there, which again I don't have a stretching tool for, so maybe I'll get a split again like I did on here. But what I'll do is I'll put a relief cut in there to reduce the height of it and see what happens. The last feature on the piece is to tip this edge. So I've marked it, and I've just used the so-called all 16ths to start that tip there, and now I shall just use a hammer and a anvil dolly to finish that off. Obviously we've got some stitching here to do. I expect that's going to split. Could reduce the area there, trim that out to put a bit of a relief there, just follow that around with a nail curve in there like that, and that might stop it splitting, so perhaps I'll do that. You can see that's starting to go now, tipping out, stretch that area a bit. Fit it back on the van, and then test fit the mess of a centre section, which has had loads of new metal in it. And say loads, it's had new metal in it. And we find out that the gap is all over the place. Now bear in mind that this was copied from the other side. The other side isn't damaged, and the other side looks nice and straight. This is less than straight. So what I'm going to have to do, won't actually go in properly. You can see that big gap there, and then obviously no gap there, no gap there. And the other side is parallel all the way, which is good. So I'm going to have to reset that flange there. So the tape is marking a straight line out, the straight line that corresponds to the new panel. So I'll straighten out those flanges and then bend them again to match that tape, and hopefully it should be quite easy. I have to trim a little bit of metal off of there, makes that hole, but yeah, other than that it should straighten out and bend again quite easily, and then with a good wind it'll match that panel there, that new panel. Quite some heavy creasing in that flange, but it's sort of flat, a few witness marks and whatnot, but it'll be okay. It's flat now, the tape's still there. Now I'm just going to grab the pliers and fold that back down again, and when it's back down again just use a dolly just to sharpen it up, just to sharpen up the crease, and see how that looks again on the van. Okay, so just with the pliers roughly bent that long bit down there, the long edge. I haven't done the top edge yet because I wanted to see how that looked. So that's fitted in there. That does fit in there, but the gap is possibly a little too much. So when I sharpen it up with a hammer and dolly, I'll just move that fold inwards a little bit, a couple of mil. It's a little bit rounded there, so it will flatten out. But I'll just try and improve on that. But yeah, proof of concept, that's pretty much right. And to be honest with you, I mean, if you look where that line ducks in, if I do flatten out this surface, then that edge will actually come up and close that gap anyway. So proof of concept's okay. That line is the line pretty much we want. So if I can tidy that up, the panel will fit. So I'm just really fitting everything up before I do any welding, fix anything up permanently. Perfect at all. Just going in there now, and what I can do, I'm happy to weld this piece in and tune this bit later. There's a little bit of movement there and stuff like that, and I think it'll be easy to tune when that's a bit more rigid. And that's just an excuse, believe me. It's a bit tapered, I can sort that out. You'll sort that out with this piece. So yeah, the bit that I made behind it now does its job, and that can be welded on there first. So we'll weld that to that, and then the whole assembly onto the car. Well, this inside area is covered in weld, and it's a patch, and well, that's a patch, and it's all been, you know, bodged. Well, let's clean up nicely and straightened out reasonably well. It's got issues, holes and whatever, and I think rather than spot weld and grind it to get it flat, I think I'm just going to put a new piece in there. It's just a nice little template, simple. That was definitely the right decision. Just going to make it so much easier, so much neater. So yeah, just knock that plate up, bent it over the railway track with a hammer, just formed it. It's a bit rough. Well, it's not too rough, just a few hammer dings in it, but does the job. So now, wait for that bite to go. Now I'm going to cut just below that line, and I cut and leave those tabs in. Cut along there and leave those tabs in, so I can still Cleco them. And I'll probably leave a bit of material up here, and a bit of material up there, so I can Cleco that as well. Right, chopped away that nasty mess, and then left the tabs on there to locate with all these other pieces. That will go in there like that, wherever you are. I think that'll do, that'll be okay. It'll be nice enough. I think it's time to weld that in. Well, say weld it in. Weld these two pieces together, and then tack that on, take it off, weld that up, and then yeah, weld that on. But I've got to paint my backside first. I'm now with some zinc spray, weld through primer on this area where the new bit will weld onto it, and on the other side as well. And I've just put a cut down there at the biggest angle I can get, and now that I will weld in because it's almost flush. I'll just put a spot on there for now. A spot on there, and then I can continue to cut through that tab and get that Cleco out, and I'll continue tacking and cutting and attempting a cut and butt. As I said before, the rest of this is nasty, and it'll stay nasty until I get a new wing. This is really just to tidy it up and get it on the road for now. So this little reciprocating air saw that I've just used to make this cut here, so that's really nice and tight. The gap there is as small as you can get, really. So I did all along there with a grinder, spot welded that, and now I can just line that up very, very carefully, get that flush, and put a tack on there, another tack on there, and then I can go along here. I might go along here with the air saw actually, because I can't get the grinder into this corner. Just go along there with the air saw and tack that into place when we're done. And then I'll probably pull the crap out the back. I can feel the, I've got some of it there. That's the tab that was there. The other stuff seems to have gone, but I'll give it a bit of a tap behind and then weld it all in. After welding it all up, I weld that on there. So I'm back in position with the two Clecos and those two holes, which correspond to the original holes in the car, in the van. Yeah, plug those on there. Actually, before I got to do that, I got to assemble that bracket, weld that bracket on, and do some painting in my backside. That's obviously welded in there now, and I'll grind it up. So this will be a fairly rough grind, just because of the general condition. I've just zapped some black paint on there. Once that's dry, I'll hit it with the grinder again, just to get it really as even as possible. So plug welded that up from the back. I just realised that concrete doesn't weld very well. But I'll clean that up. That should grind flat. So before I'd welded in this patch panel there, and when I had it all Clecoed together, the gap on here was horrible. It was all tapered. I was thinking to myself that I was going to cut that end off and redo it, because there's a big gap there and it was all over the place. But now that's welded in and screwed up, and the flange is welded onto this piece, two pieces welded together, and I have painted my backside. The gap is okay. I will get a hammer and dolly and crisping it up a little bit, but I'm not going to change that now. I'm not going to do anything with it. And that now is, well, that's ready to weld in. So there's a bit of a mismatch here which I didn't have before, but I think it's basically because of the interference between these two pieces. So if I do a slit through there, or mark that and cut this down a bit more, I'll be able to get those lined up. That'll be able to come forward, that'll be able to go back, and we'll be okay. Get it welded onto the car, van. The only other thing I want to do, which talking about it has reminded me, is I can't find it now. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Let's get that clip. This is the. Oh God! Now the phone's ringing. Oh, it all happens at once, doesn't it? So that goes on there. So I'm just going to position the front panel and get that positioned. So just put the old front panel up in there. Place that bracket and drew a hole with a pencil. Drew the hole. Quite chuffed that it's right on bang on the centre. So I'm going to drill a hole in that and take it a step further. So front panel in, bracket screwed to the front panel, and now I can just mark the position of those legs there, and then get them welded onto this piece. Once that's done, I guess I'm trimming here and welding it in. Welding that bracket onto here, yeah, and then fitting up the rest of it. Right, pointing is difficult with holding that one hand, but that isn't really lining up quite how I liked it, would like it. So I've just marked where the radius should be through the pencil line. I'm just going to get the hammer and dolly and move that radius, move it down to here. So I should do that just by tucking that in there and just moving, tucking that just below that line there, and then hammering above it and moving the crease and fading it out through there. Bodge-tastic. There we go, just like that. So you can see I've moved the crease down. I might actually just put the spot weld, put a spot weld on that corner first, and then I can bring up this material here, put spot weld on here, there too, because that's level, and then just sort of all adjust it up into what it wants to be, and then we can weld on to here. But before I do that, I'm just going to do a bit of grinding along that weld there. I'm going to open those holes up to 6mm for plug welding, and as I say, I've already painted my behind, so maybe some of it's come off. That's not a real issue actually, because you can paint at any time. It was the meaning of it was to get up behind that bracket. So taking the opportunity to flange this out just a little bit, so it's not quite so rough. I decided to use these butt welding clamps. I mean, you're never going to get a zero gap with the butt welding clamps, but it does hold this together nicely, and I can make that up. I can bridge that and then just make, and it'll be a tidy enough weld. So what started off as a little bracket for the grill, which actually goes that way up, turned it out to be a whole new nearly corner, but that's alright. There's a bit of a hard transition between these two bits here. This join, that's supposed to be a straight line, but the old bit was that mullered. But like I say, I'll deal with that when I get a new wing and blah blah blah. So all that's left for today is to weld that in, plug weld that in, and put some paint on it, prime it up. Once that's primed up, I've got to weld in the headlamp ball. One last clip of this with that welded in. So now, if you're still watching, it's the time for me to ask your subscription and your like. If you watched it this far and you haven't subscribed already, why not? You just put up with me for half an hour. Surely you want more. Cheers.